Satish Robertson is a dynamic trumpeter and composer whose soulful sound seamlessly blends jazz, gospel, hip hop, R&B, funk, and blues. Inspired by Miles Davis and mentored by luminaries like Jeremy Pelt and the late Ted Curson, he's developed a bold, distinct voice on his instrument. His 2020 album 80s Joint highlights his innovative spirit, combining virtuosic trumpet playing with vibrant sounds of 80s pop, rock, and funk. He's also performed locally and internationally with master saxophonist James Carter at prestigious venues such as Birdland, the Blue Note, and Ronnie Scott's in London. And we're excited to dive into his musical journey. So, Satish, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Abe. Glad to be here, man.
Now, awesome. So, you know, I think it takes a certain type of person who's willing to go outside the box in this music. We usually see players who will play one aesthetic, whether it's hard bop or bebop or funk or straight ahead. And you've let these other styles come into your music. So, talk to me about the thought process for that because it definitely takes, courage to bring those influences into jazz music.
Well, sure. Thing is, although I ended up becoming primarily a jazz musician, all my life I've always loved all styles of music. I grew up loving everything from John Coltrane, Dakota State and Temptations, Salt and Pepper, Prince, Guns N' Roses, Dr. Dre, Wu-Tang, and all, and that's just to name a few. So those sounds have always stayed with me, and I love to play different idioms. I love playing straight ahead. I love playing hard bop, modal. I love the work I do in wedding bands where we're playing everything from Earth, Wind and Fire to Rihanna to, I love playing music. I love playing in my church band, playing gospel. So with the whole 80s joint project came about because I had always wanted to get into production, and I just started messing around in GarageBand, and I started finding all these patches. And me being the avid composer that I am, I'm always writing. I said, let me see what I could do with some of these sounds. And so I started constructing different tracks, and then I got this idea. What started off as something I was just doing for my own amusement turned into this theme that I really wanted to tap into. And most of that album was constructed during the pandemic. So I'm sitting here in my house, multi-tracking, tracking my trumpet, tracking my MIDI keyboard, adding all these different sounds and layers and programming, sequencing drums. And I just started thinking back to, I'm an 80s baby. I was born 1980. So I started thinking about all that stuff I used to hear back then and things I still listen to now every now and then, everything from Prince to Michael Jackson, Madonna, all those different things that I was hearing from that time period. And I that recording that project was I can't even emphasize how much fun I had doing that. That really helped me out during an otherwise dark, turbulent, and scary time.
You know, this is so interesting to me because in the last maybe 2 years, I started playing pop tunes on jazz gigs. It started by playing like a Beatles tune, and
Mhm.
then people were coming up to me and they were like, "Oh, I love when you did that." And then we started incorporating more and more into them. It took me a long time to say, yeah, it's okay to do this. I think a lot of jazz musicians almost feel I don't want to say embarrassed, but it's like they have to only let a certain aesthetic dictate where the music goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's unfortunate. Like, if you look at some of the greatest minds to have handled this music, you look at a Miles Davis, a Donald Byrd, or Herbie Hancock, a Chick Corea, a Joe Zawinul, John McLaughlin. Like their scope was so big. They were Pat Metheny. They knew no bounds. Why not? Why not? Miles, Doug, James Brown, Muddy Waters, Hendrix.
Yeah, he loved
Um,
Hendrix. Yeah.
no, yeah, why not? Herbie was checking out Sly Stone. Why not? Like there's so many things you can do with music, and I just think that people should really be true to what their muse is. If you're someone who, from the heart, is strictly a straight ahead person, then by all means, go ahead. But if you have an imagination that pulls from all sorts of different cloths, who are you to deny yourself that? And what right does anybody have to pigeonhole you as such?
Yeah. I think that has to do with, just jazz education,
Yep,
almost feeling like have to we get locked into these things and you have to break out of them if you really want to be yourself because not too many people are exposed to just jazz in their household.
that's true.
I mean,
True.
yep. You mentioned all these other influences you have and that, you're a child of the 80s. So yeah, that's great. And we're just at the beginning of 2025. The new year just started about 2 weeks ago. So kind of talk to me about what's going on this year, what you're looking forward to doing. Anything at the end of the last year that you were excited about. So let us know what's going on.
Okay, so right now this year, as a working musician, you know how kind of slow January can be. So, right now I'm in that mode where I'm kind of hustling up, making my rounds, lining some things up for the next couple of months. But one thing I'm looking forward to this summer is a possible tour with this group that I met while I was at the Poland stop on the James Carter tour that I did a couple months ago. There's this group from Poland called the Groovosifers, great funky jazz fusion group. I met their organist out here in New York when I played a gig in Harlem. He told them about me, and they made sure to come and check me out at one of our Poland shows with James. And that led to them hiring me to record on their upcoming debut album. So I came back here to the States, recorded my part in Queens. So right now, they're working out some logistics to do a tour of Europe around August. So looking forward to that.
And yeah, now that you had the recording experience when you were doing the album during COVID, it's probably you could just do these things at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's one of the good things about technology. So, how long have you been working with James Carter for?
So I first started working with him in 2017, and that came about after just years of bumping into each other at the jam sessions. So first of all, in my opinion, he's the baddest saxophonist on the planet. And he's a very, very intense guy, and it takes a lot of nerve to dare stand next to him on a bandstand. So I have memories of being at jam sessions and feeling my heart beat so hard it's about to pop out my chest. But he saw something in me, man. So after so many years, we both happened to be invited to sit in with a mutual singer friend of ours, and he heard me. He hasn't heard me in a while at that point. And he says, "Hey man, I'm back here at the Blue Note next week. Come sit in." I came back the next week and I thought maybe I'd sit in on a couple songs. He kept me up on stage for most of the set and then invited me back the next night and did the same thing. And months later, he hired me to do something at the Blue Note for a Don Bias tribute. And we just stayed in touch from there. I come and sit in on various gigs of his. He came and sat in on one of mine. And then when he was ready to do this Lockjaw tribute project, which he's been doing the past couple years, he called me and I've been doing a bunch of dates with him on the Lockjaw project. We did two stints at Birdland 2023, 2024. We did various festivals upstate in Boston, the Europe tour, and so that's been a very rewarding experience. Definitely, you can't help but grow under a master like him.
Well, you said that when you first played with him, your heart was pounding out of your chest. Um,
Yeah.
how long did it really take to feel comfortable on the bandstand, or is it something you still, from time to time it might come up those, those mo like when do you really feel like we're on the bandstand as, colleagues?
I'll tell you the truth. Speaking for myself, it varies. It varies. I'll admit, I started feeling pretty comfortable on the bandstand until I really started working regularly with someone like James, where you're constantly being pushed. He has no weaknesses musically, and anything that you have that's a weakness is going to be drawn out. He's
Mhm.
done it all, he's seen it all, he's heard it all. So he's going to know exactly what you need to do. He's going to let you know exactly what you need to do, and he's going to demonstrate exactly what you need to do. So, whatever comfort you've gathered playing with everyone else that you've played with or doing whatever else you do, now that doesn't apply. So now it's almost like being in school all over again, being stretched above and beyond.
Yeah. You know, once we get into this music and we make it our career, I feel like there are certain milestones in our life, whether it's certain people we interact with or mentor us, or just certain gigs we did a certain period. What happened in your more, let's call them informative years that really shaped your journey to where you are today? That without those things, you would not be the, musician you are today.
One thing I would say is growing up in Jersey City, there's this community program free to all inspiring musicians. So I was about to turn 21 when I picked up the trumpet. I grew up playing piano, messing around a little guitar. I had musical training growing up, but I wasn't one of these trumpeters that's been playing in school bands growing up. So here I am, a young adult wanting to learn this instrument and wanting to learn this music. I was fortunate that this project, part of what was called the Community Awareness Series, was available to me. It was free music workshops ran by the Spirit of Life Ensemble, which is a large jazz ensemble based out of New Jersey, which has been in operation since 1975. And so they're kind of like unsung heroes in terms of yielding generations of jazz talent. So I started off as a student of their workshop, studying under some of the trumpet players in that band, one of which was the late Ted Curson, who in his youth played with Mangus and Max Roach, Eric Dolphy, among others. So the knowledge that they
So that's your
passed on,
first trumpet quote unquote teacher, I guess, right?
it was three people at the same time in that band. This was their trumpet section: Ted Curson, Rob Henke, Vinny Cutro. Those were my first trumpet teachers.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But
And
you didn't pick up the trumpet until you were how old, you said?
I was 2 months from turning 21 when I picked up the trumpet.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah. And
I
I knew
mean,
I wanted it. I knew I wanted it. I knew I was willing to work hard, put in the time, put in the years, learn from the best, study the greats.
I would say 95% of musicians, maybe no, probably higher, 90, 99, start before they turn 10.
Yeah,
Or maybe like when they're like 12 or something like that. So,
you're
no,
not wrong.
that
Not wrong. I could count on one hand how many other musicians that I've been out here working with that can tell me that they started as late as I did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's and when you look back at where you are in your journey now, you probably wouldn't change a thing. That's just your story, you know?
And you're right about that. And I'll be honest, it took me a minute to get there. At first, I used to almost hold it against myself that I started late, especially when you're first starting off. Say I'm 22, 23, and I'm just like transcribing, still learning how to play in every keys, and then I might see maybe someone else my same age who has been doing it for much longer, and they can nail every 2 5 1. They got all this language, all these chops. And at that time, I might have felt insecure. Oh man, I wish I started. But after a while, I got to exactly what you said, a state of mind of, no, I wouldn't change a thing. This is my story. And I feel that it gives me a unique perspective.
Yeah, and you have to persevere through that comparison, and that's an important part of the journey too, where that's probably where the drive also comes from, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So, when it comes to performing live, are there certain aspects that feel challenging for you, still? Or obviously it's very rewarding and everything, but are there certain things about playing live for an audience that you still find to be a challenge, or is it just home for you?
It depends. It might be certain environments where the acoustics may be a factor. As a trumpet player, I'm at the mercy of the sound guy. So if they're not handling their business in terms of what's going on with my microphone, then that might make me have to kind of overblow, burn myself out a
Yeah, and the
little bit.
reverb's important too for the trumpet on the mic.
Yes, yes. Outside of that factor, just making sure that you're prepared musically and that you believe in what you're doing and that you're putting the music first, you're putting reaching the audience first. If you're tapped in with those things, as I've experienced, if I'm tapped in with those things, then it isn't so scary performing. If my mind is not together, then that poses some challenges.
Yeah, you have to be, if you're saying your mind is not together, that poses some challenges.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you have to
And
be you have to be relaxed, and there's no other way to say it. You mentioned Miles Davis, and I know Miles is definitely one of your influences. He thought about space and silence a lot in his
yes.
music, and I feel like that's very conducive to the trumpet. So, you know, uh, how do you think about silence or rest in your playing? Is it a conscious thought when you're improvising? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So it's somewhat of a conscious thought because it is something that I think about a lot. That is something that I've really learned from players such as Miles. And I feel it's very important compositionally to a piece of music. There's ebbs and flows.
Right.
I teach at the Jazz House Kids program out here in Manhattan. One thing I tell my students is think of speaking when you're playing. If I talk like this, hey man, how you doing? Let me tell you what happened to me the other day. It's not so much engaging. In fact, it can be off-putting.
Exactly.
Versus if I break things up a little more, there's much more of a flow. So, I try to be very conscious of that.
Yeah, so talk to me about teaching. What are the things that, you want to convey to your students to help them, get over the mountain? Because I think it's not just about the notes, but you have to kind of tell them some unconventional things too. So are there
Absolutely.
certain things that, you always want to make sure you instill when you see a player who has the drive and the motivation to be great?
hmm So one thing I try to convey to them is make sure that you're doing this because you have a love for it, and make sure that you not just love the music, but you love yourself. So while you and I have been talking, I've been noticing your sign that you have when you will be kind to your mind. I cannot emphasize that enough. Be kind to your mind. This world isn't always going to be kind to you. So I try to emphasize them being kind to themselves, prioritizing mental and spiritual wellness and knowing that they are somebody on and off of their instrument. And, do music because you have a love and a passion for it, but also invest in yourself on and off of your instrument. Invest in getting a good sense of self-worth on and off your instrument. And make sure your identity isn't exclusively tethered to your instrument.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't feel in a good place, spiritually, emotionally, the music and your life as a musician can kind of implode almost because the 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 music runs parallel to what's going on in your
It
life,
really
I
does.
think.
It
And
really does.
the world is every day you wake up, it's waiting to kick you in the face. So you have to be kind to your mind. So no, I appreciate you seeing the sign. It's but easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, very much easier said than done. And, it's just like learning your instrument. It's just like mastering your instrument. It's something that you have to invest in daily, and each day is its own day. You'll have moments where your chops just aren't feeling together, despite the fact that you know your stuff, despite the fact that you have put in the time. And so is the case with, wellness. You're going to have your good days and your bad days, but you just have to be intentional about it the same way you're intentional about working at your craft and working on your artistry.
Yeah. Like if you have a bad day, you have to just leave it at that. You have to say it's a bad day and don't
Exactly.
get depressed about it. Just, just move forward from it.
Yes, yes.
So,
And what it looks like for you, for me, my faith as a Christian, that's a guiding light when things aren't going the way I would prefer them to go.
mhm,
So what that looks like for the individual, if it's a spiritual practice, if it's talking to the right people in their lives that can help kind of guide them through those crazy moments,
yeah.
if it's just solitude and just meditation, whatever that looks like to you, just be intentional
Yeah,
in
this music is, I mean, like, it's hard to, some people don't want to talk about the music being a spiritual music. That's fine. That's what it, but it is like the music has to come through you, you know?
exactly, exactly,
It's
and I
coming
believe,
from somewhere, whether you want to, the higher, whatever you want, the higher power, the universe, whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? It comes from somewhere.
and yeah, and as it's coming from somewhere and filtering through you, I believe that whatever you got going on internally can either aid or complicate what you're trying to do.
Definitely.
So, you want to tap into wellness so you can have as few barriers as possible in emitting what you're trying to emit in your music.
Yeah. No, this is great. I love how honest you are talking about it because, you know, jazz musicians have a tendency to pull back when it comes to talking about this stuff, and that's one of the reasons I started the podcast to let people, it's just as important as the technical side of playing. So, thank you for, your honesty about it, and thank you for doing it.
Oh yeah, thank you for having this podcast. This is a great thing you're doing.
Thanks, man. So where can everybody find you? Social media, website, we want to just plug all that for us.
Absolutely. So, social media, you can find me on Instagram as Satish Robertson Music. You can find me on that same handle on TikTok and what's this new thing, Threads. You can find me on Facebook as Satish Robertson. You can find me on YouTube as Satish Robertson.
Awesome. No, thanks so much.
Thank you.